Here we are with my good friend, Tina Gerke. And Tina, you've heard me talk a lot about three conditions of the heart, sand, stone, and clay. And you have an amazing story. And I would just invite you to maybe start at the beginning and unpack that a little bit for us on how God has transformed your heart.
Okay, well, I grew up in a Christian home, in a church that is very deeply rooted. Tons of family, my grandparents, all my cousins, everybody was there. My family was very, every single Sunday we'd be there, every Wednesday night. But it was also a church that had a lot of rules and regulations. Mm-hmm. And for me, I interpreted it in the way that was the only way to go. And so some of the things that it made me become was I didn't want to accept Christ because I had to join the church to do that in my eyes. Mm. And so it was a while before I decided to surrender my life, and because of that, I became pretty sand-hearted. I didn't want to follow the rules, and so therefore I wasn't living for Christ, and I could do pretty much whatever I wanted to do. Probably in my middle school years, I was extremely fearful of doing anything wrong. I would say I'm sorry to every single person 500 times a day, to the point that my parents and my sisters and brothers would just be so annoyed at me. Something happened in high school, and as I was thinking about it and praying about it, I realized that it had to do a lot with sports and the recognition that I got. Winning some of the stuff that I did, I became very prideful.
I want to know about that stuff because that's important to me.
It is.
Yeah. What were some of those sports things?
I ran cross country, and that was probably the one that I was more known for. I had an incredible team. We won every sectional that we were in.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Regional champions. We went to state my junior year.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really fun. It was
What
a family.
School?
Norwell.
But you didn't just do cross country?
Right. I was in basketball, and that was my love. I loved basketball more than anything. My sister and I got to play together. My junior year, she was a senior, and that was really cool. We won sectionals that year. So that was a highlight.
Wow.
So, and then I ran track also.
What'd you do in track?
I ran middle distance, 400 through 1600, and then some relays.
Those long ones are just painful for me to even think about that in the cross country thing. But I've seen your beautiful left-handed jump shot. That had to be a lot of fun to win that sectional with your sister.
It was incredible. It was incredible.
So that really helps me. That kind of sets the stage for you're getting those accolades.
Right.
And from middle school to high school, there's been this change. You sort of perceived the church as stone-hearted.
Right.
Wouldn't articulate it that way then, but it caused you to respond with sand-heartedness.
Exactly.
Okay, so pick it up for us in high school.
Well, going through all those sports without walking with Christ made the praise just completely unbalanced, and I was taking it all on myself rather than giving Him the glory. And so I think it was about, sophomore year, as soon as I could date, my parents gave me a 16-year-old limit. As soon as I could date, that then became the next step for me, and boys became, I needed a boyfriend all the time. Mm-hmm. and not just any boyfriend, but the popular ones, the athletes, and that kind of thing, and that led me to a guy. It was shortly after I had started dating, I met a guy that we became sexually active really quickly, and it was an extremely unbalanced, unhealthy relationship. We were both extremely immature, not living for Christ. I went through a range of emotions. I just I didn't even recognize myself to even look back at it. And my mom used to tell me that I used to be a flower, and I just put a glass over it, and it just wilted and died.
Oh my.
And that's what it just kind of came to. And that ended in February of my junior year. That was the year that we won sectionals and everything. It was kind of a packed year. But after that, right after, I don't even know, I was in denial for a couple weeks, but I realized that I thought I was just really upset that he had broke up with me, and feeling sick all the time, nauseous all the time, and nothing clicked in my head that anything could be wrong, because that just wasn't going to happen to me. But I found out I was pregnant at the end of my junior year. That was devastating, absolutely devastating, because I had one thing that it was just thrilling every single day to go to the mailbox, because I was for sure getting out of Bluffton. I was not staying around here. and I hated school other than sports, so the only way I was going to go to college was to run. And I would have, I don't even know, 5 to 10 letters a day in the mailbox just waiting for me. And probably the saddest day was when those letters stopped. And that's what happened, because when I was pregnant, I couldn't, obviously run or anything like that. And so my life was spiraling out of control. And I literally remember waking up one morning and just thinking, this is what the bottom feels like. Like I just felt I cannot go any lower than this. And that was a really hard time. I was the girl, I became a statistic, and I hated that. I hated it. And I was the girl at prom that was crying in the bathroom because she was pregnant. I mean, that literally happened to me. You hear those stories, but it was one of those things that really happened to me.
And so that's your junior year? Mm-hmm. And what happened? You had some choices to make,
Right.
What happened?
My family was a huge support. I can only praise God that I have such a strong family. And not only my parents and my brothers and sisters, but my cousins and my grandma, and just everybody was such a huge support. It became a battle, though, with Jason. And again, looking back, we were both so immature, not at all ready to handle this. Mm-hmm. He didn't end up going to the college that he had originally chose, and because of the issue, but he ended up going away to college. We never got back together. But then it became just a battle over, what I want, what he wants, and I became really worried that he was going to take my kid away from me, and this and that and this and that, which in reality would have never happened, but in my mind that's what was going to happen. So my senior year, I walked into those doors and had everybody look straight to my stomach, and it was just like nothing I'd ever experienced, just because I was all by myself. You're walking alone, you're the pregnant girl, everybody knew my name, everybody knew what happened. Mm-hmm. And it just became a journey. Like I'm the type of person when hardships come, I just want to buck up and hold my head up high and say, okay, this happened to me and I'm going on with it. So if you make fun of me, that's fine, whatever. This is how it is. And that's kind of how I went about it. My basketball coach was awesome. He let me continue to practice with them.
Wow.
Which was cool. I did miss I was too pregnant to run. I would have been worthless to be on the running team. But so I did miss that, which was really hard because that was like a family to me. But basketball, they did allow me to. I played up until 2 weeks before I delivered, and then I had him Thanksgiving on '96.
Wow.
So.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty neat. It was crazy how it all worked out.
And then you became a mom your senior year in high school. And how did those months unfold before you graduated?
I went back to school 2 weeks after I had him. I was in the best shape of my life, so I just bounced right back. And I played my first basketball game. It was about 2.5 weeks after I had him. So I just went right back to being, the high school girl. And again, my parents were so great because they watched him while I was at school. I was able to go into the program where I could work part-time, and I was a secretary for their business. So I was able to stay at home half the day and then go into school. And then I'd go to practice and then come home, and my mom watched him throughout all that time, which was really great. So I was able to have a little bit left. And again, I wasn't a Christian yet, and so I was able to have a little bit of glory left. And it was something that it just helped me finish out the school year. I would have never wanted to.
Well, what happened then that drew you to Christ?
Really, there was nothing that really just led me to it, except one night, Memorial Day weekend in '97, I was just talking with a buddy, came home. My cousins had hosted the get-together for all the young kids in the church, and we were on their way back from Angola, and we were just talking, and he was unconverted and I was unconverted, and we were just talking here and there, and we just said, man, what would happen if we died? Really, what would happen? And I really don't think it hit me, except the fact that we knew better, and we knew that we weren't saved. We just knew it growing up, and we talked until it was probably 3 a.m, and finally just drove together and surrendered our lives then.
Really? Mm-hmm. Right there at 3 a.m. Mm-hmm.
Woke the pastor up, and
you did.
We did.
You've got to be kidding me. That's vintage you.
We did.
You called him up at 3 a.m?
No, we just went and rang his doorbell. We didn't.
Are
call
you
him.
serious?
Yeah.
Did he come to the door?
Oh yeah. And I think that he had those enough that he knew what was happening. Like if his doorbell rings at 3 a.m, he knows that people are coming.
All right. Interesting. So you got this sand heart thing going, loose, licentious, scattered, and then you surrender your life to Christ. What happens next?
Immediately, it turned to stone heart. Immediately, it turned to following all the rules and regulations, and that's the only way to do it. Which, in one sense, was great because it kept me committed to Christ, and it didn't allow me to sway because I had just grown up. Like when you make the commitment, you're committed.
Right.
Which was great, but it also built this box. And I lived in a box for a long time with the Christ that I thought was. And that was really probably more damaging than anything to try to get out of that box. I've been a Christian for 13 years, and there are still things that will pop up that I will have to remind myself that is not biblical. You know, that is just something that you took on yourself.
How long do you think you had that stone heart?
I believe that God started using the chisel on my heart when I met Luke, my husband now. He grew up in a family that he had went to several different churches, and he was in a church at the moment with an awesome pastor. His name's Pastor Wag. He lives in Grable, and that pastor changed my vision, or like my outlook on Christ and what that all meant. Those are the years when God started saying, okay, you know, we're going to chisel away a little bit at a time, and then he'd let me rest for a while, and then he'd start working at it again. And Luke was great. Like, I think that he was confused too. What's funny is Luke was dating my best friend. I wasn't best friends with her when they were dating, but we became best friends later, and he came to the church because she had joined the church and had to break up with him because he wasn't a part of the church. And he was confused because he was a Christian and she was a Christian, and he didn't understand why they couldn't still date. So he just started coming to the church just to check it out and see what it was like. By January, we knew that God had put us together and that we were going to get married. So. Wow.
And still with the stone heart, so to speak?
Oh, yeah.
Right there? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And then you got married?
We actually got engaged in June, got married in October.
Wow.
So the whole process of meeting him took about a year before we got married.
And you took your stone heart into that marriage?
Oh, yeah.
How'd that work for you?
That was really hard. That was probably the worst 2 years of my whole entire life. And looking back, I blamed him, of course. But there was so much growing that I did that I know that I was at fault for so many of I was just closed-minded to everything.
When I hear you talk and tell that part of your story, I see the sand-heartedness, and I see a young girl who wants to be in control of her own life, be God in her own life. And then she gets saved, and she takes that same concept and flip-flops it, but she's going to still be God in her own life, be a rule keeper, obey in a way that gains her favor with God. If things go well, it's based on your obedience. If things don't go well, it must be your fault.
Absolutely.
So it looks like you become more and more aware of your own sin, of desiring life apart from God, of pride, trying to be God in your own life. That's what sand and stone represent. And then something had to happen where you desired a heart of clay, a humble heart. What happened?
Probably Jamaica. The first time we went to Jamaica was 2 or 3 years, I can't remember, into our marriage. And it was one of those things that the pastor, it was the same pastor that I talked about before, came to us and said, "You guys want to go?" And sure, why not? You know. And
this is a mission trip.
Exactly. And I was able to talk to my sister and asked her if she wanted to go. And her reaction and what God did through her showed me that God calls us. And I mean, in all different areas. And she said, okay, I'm jumping on board. So we took this small team of us to Jamaica, and I just left my heart there and saw a race of different people that just truly loved God and had nothing. And I don't know what it was about it, but it changed me, and we just had an itching, like that was it for us. We knew. We both loved short-term missions. We had gone in high school, and then coming together and still having that passion, we knew that God was going to lead us there eventually. So that was our first trip, and then it took us about 6 years to get back because we had two more kids, and it just wasn't right. And then in 2007, God laid it on our hearts again and said, you guys are going to co-lead this team. So we went back with the WAGs again and co-led the team and just really developed a leadership heart for this. And ever since then, we've gone back once or twice every single year, and it's just been awesome. And that's developed me into saying, I have no control. And I couldn't have a stone heart to say, this is how it's going to be. Because every mission trip we've taken there's probably been 6 different churches represented. And to go with that many different people, if I would have stayed rigid, there's no way that they would have been ministered to, and I would have been trying to change them into my ideal.
Right.
And it just wouldn't have been what God wanted.
So your awareness of sin, your own sin, your awareness of a sand and stone heart, and your awareness of God's grace, and like the presence of that gracious spirit of the restorer, that's what led you to a heart of clay. In essence, saying to God, I can't, you can, and I must decrease, you must increase.
Absolutely.
That's powerful.
In 2007, I was extremely a worrywart. I mean, this is everybody in my family, it's just generational bondage. And he started saying that I was not going to be in women's ministry anymore. I led Bible studies for about 6-7 years, and he said, I'm going to put you in high school girls. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. What the world? I mean, it's just totally 2 different worlds. And so I quit the Bible studies and went to Jamaica and came back, and he just opened doors like crazy, and it's only his hand that kept doing that. So then the next year, he said, I want you to quit this church's Bible study, and I'm going to give you a ministry at Lakewood Park. And we had one kid in particular that we were already friends with his family, and we just went to him and said, do you think that any of your friends would want to do a Bible study or just, hang out at our house? And so he was like, sure. And we were like, okay, how many is this going to be? A couple? And it was just, I don't even know, 10.
Really?
I don't even know how many it was, but they just were so open and willing. And what we began to realize is these kids were so thirsty for people that were relatable, to come and talk to them and be open and non-judgmental and just let them say what they want and help them walk through this crazy, middle school, high school time in their life. And
yeah, don't you think kids, it's interesting that God took you back to where you had the major crisis. Don't you think kids get their need for restoration?
Absolutely.
And don't you think they try to restore themselves?
Absolutely.
And don't you think that they want help?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, that is like the harvest is ripe. And we just walked in there, and it was just, most of the time when I tell my testimony to a group of kids, they just don't stop talking. You sit down with them and they just tell you every single thing. And we started a mentor program, and some of the ladies that are coming out, they're saying they don't know me and they're telling me this stuff.
Right.
And it's just so how it happens.
That's
they
powerful.
just need somebody to sit there and say, God loves you, I love you, and whatever you're going through is okay.
It's also interesting to see that your heart of clay has been developed in your desire to bring restoration to other people, to allow God to use you to bring restoration to others, and especially students. But Restoration Road is oftentimes 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and you've had some other challenges in your life. You want to share those?
Right. Well, going back to me having Jared, and a major thing that I think really hindered me being able to be free also was walking through not having, Jason and I were not together, and walking through, we were in a court battle pretty much. We lived for 2 years with continuances. I mean, we'd have a court date and it'd come to it and it'd say, oh, we need a continuance. And so we just kept in that routine. There was really no structure. There was no anything, and it was just, he would call me if he'd want to come see Jared, and he would want to take him. But again, my parents and I were so worried that something would happen. I lived very selfishly. I wanted to be in control, and so I can control it that way. No judge had told me that I had to let him go, and so in the best interest of Jared, that's what we just kept saying. So there was a wall that just shot up between him and our families, and Jared felt that. That was hard raising a little kid that they would come and try to pick him up, and whereas he probably had a blast at their house, he knew that I was so upset. Right. And just, screaming and crying. And I remember one time his mom had come to get him at daycare, and screaming, crying, didn't want to go. And then all of a sudden she said, well, maybe next time we'll go to the park. Well, he heard that word park, and instantly the tears were shut off and wanted to go. And it made me realize that I was not being fair. I definitely wasn't being fair to that situation, and caused a lot of turmoil that was unnecessary. We did go to court. We got everything hashed out that the schedule or whatever was going to be, and this is how much he was going to go. And what happened was Jason joined the military. So he became a Marine, and he actually was gone for 4 years. So he was back in our lives maybe every other month, whenever he came home, whatever he could get off or whatever. And still our relationship was surfacey, and at times really, we'd still yell at each other and be in that kind of a battle. It was about 5 years ago, he came home. He was going to switch. He was done with the Marines after 4 years. He was going to switch to I think it was the Army. He was going to fly helicopters. And I remember him calling me, and he was so proud of that. And he wanted to tell Jared and make sure that Jared knew. And he had moved home. He had gotten married. He had a child, and he had came home, and so he was going to be home for that year before he switched. And so Jared had to go with him every other weekend. And it was the first time that I realized that I still wasn't living completely surrendered to Christ, because I took that situation back into my hands and said, well, I want to control it this way. You can have him, make sure he's back on Sunday, because he has to go to church with me. And if he doesn't go to church with me, who knows what's going to happen. And I just wasn't trusting that God was going to make it okay. But it was the weirdest thing. Him and his wife, or me and his wife, weren't great friends. We were cordial to each other for the most part, but it wasn't like we were great friends. And I was leading a women's Bible study. In November of that year, God started speaking to my heart and said, I want you to invite her to your Bible study. And exactly, that was impossible. I was pretty sure that either God was mistaken or he had the wrong person. That was not going to happen. There was no way that was going to happen. 3 weeks later, I got a phone call that said that Jason was killed in a car accident.
Oh my goodness.
And there are no words to describe that. It rocked my family. It rocked me. It was unbelievable. Unbelievable.
How old was Jared at the time?
Jared it would have been 6 years ago, so 7.
Wow.
He had just turned 7, I think it was. I became best friends with Jason's wife. She joined the Bible study. We went through Experiencing God, which was an awesome Bible study where we had some awesome moments with God to be able to walk with her. And she was pregnant at the time, so we got to walk through the last few months of her pregnancy and be with her when their child was born, and just fell in love with his family. And it opened my eyes to just how selfish I was, and just how much Satan had a hold of me in that one moment of time. It was like it just turned my life right around.
Wow. So you had a tragedy to surrender and say, I can't, you can. When we get dinged, rusted, torn, faded, a lot of times we try to take the restoration process back. There's been another area in your life where you've done that. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
I began counting calories and fat grams to a point that was obsessive. I wouldn't eat anything that had more than 4 grams of fat in it. Just silly. And it became something that was on and off a little bit. And sometimes I just handle it fine, and it wasn't a big deal. Well, actually, the last few years, it's become ridiculous. To the point of me wondering what everybody views me as. And I really feel like I had conquered so many pits that I had been in, that this is the one that Satan was going to slam me with. And it was all over. You can't go anywhere without seeing lose 40 pounds, when somebody's already so beautiful and skinny. Everything pointed to you need to look better. You need to look this way, and then you'll be perfect. And and to be honest, it's a struggle that Satan still to this day will have me in. I feel like I'm getting released from it, but it turned into not that I would say I would be diagnosed bulimic, but I had bulimic tendencies, where there'd be days when I would go and puke after I ate ice cream, anything junk food-ish, anything, and I would justify it that I can't get fat, I can't gain 1 pound, and it's funny to see how people view you versus how you view yourself.
Exactly.
And until recently, it had become a sickness. And I couldn't surrender that part to God, because I honestly had felt, man, God, if I give this over to you and not worry about gaining weight or anything, you're going to make me fat. I mean, it was silly, and I've gotten to a point now where he's just said, Tina, you are beautiful in my sight. And if you are a normal person, you're going to be so much more easy to be around. If I'm around somebody that's super, super toned and skinny, then I get real jealous and all this. But these high school kids need to see that you're okay in your own skin, and that you're not constantly doing that. And working with high school kids probably has been the one thing that's brought me out of it the most.
3 perspectives in life. One is my own clouded perspective, and I see myself through those lenses, and it's what it is, it's clouded. The second one is others' clouded perspective. I try to see myself through how others see me, and it's flawed. But there's only one crystal clear 20/20 vision, and it's the perspective of God the Restorer. And the only way that we can know what that perspective is to pursue the Word of God, the people of God, and the Spirit of God, and surrender, like Tina has said, saying, I can't, you can, with my old basket case of a life that's followed by a whole bunch more little I can't, you cans, things that we have to surrender, because it's called the road, because Restoration Road is a journey of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and your story is going to be used to help many find Restoration Road. And I am so thankful for what you've done to invest in the students at Lakewood Park Christian School, including my daughter and her friends who went to Jamaica with you and want to go back. And I just see you as a living, vibrant image of the restoration of Christ, how you found significance in His love, control in His power as you surrender, contentment in His peace, and security in the truth of who He is. Tina, thank you so much for being a part of the Restoration Road.
Yes, thanks.
Hi, I'm Mitch, and we've seen how God has been using Restoration Road to bring restoration to the lives of many. When I volunteered as a teaching pastor, I recognized the need for a restoration curriculum, and that's why we wrote Restoration Road, and it includes a study guide and a DVD that can be used for an individual or in small groups so that people can learn how to live authentically from the inside out. Get your copies today at therestorationroad.com.